Pardon.
Teşekkür ederiz. Teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Siz çekin de
Was your trip, I should say, the emphasis, because obviously whenever you go to Washington, you go private, I suspect you stop at the headquarters.
When you're on your
Turkey, actually, the so-called private domain does not exist. Everything seems to be in the president.
But they're interested in anybody who's interested. So, boring.
Finally, we managed to establish the Fulbright.
Okay, well, congratulations. That's something, as I finish up my tour
That's
here,
right.
on the list of sort of the top priorities from 2.5 years ago, that will be one I can check off.
Maybe you could contribute to Turkey.
It's been increased.
It has been.
It has been increased dramatically.
But it's, how many Turkish students are there in the United States?
I think it's actually around.
Those that are getting PhDs are coming. We get quite a number of applications for job positions that are getting started.
No, I mean, that's one of the good things.
Harika haber. Önce bulunmuyor.
We are privileged to have him as last year, like this one on the 23rd of January of last year. And I mentioned then that the year ahead was full of promise, and looking back, model partnership based on common ideals and values, and demonstrated his eagerness to see it come true. In his first year of office, President Obama has met with the leaders of Turkey on 4 separate occasions 20 years ago. It's a truth universally acknowledged that economic and business relations between the US and Turkey have room for improvement. And this past year, we took some important steps to rectify this. Last December, Prime Minister Erdogan visited Washington, D.C., and his trip signaled a new page in economic relations between the countries, as top officials from both sides revealed details of a new framework mechanism. I believe wholeheartedly
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank Chairman Haluk Dinçer and everybody from TAİK for this wonderful luncheon and for your coming here today. Last year when I spoke, I promised that I would try harder in Turkish and improve my Turkish. We will see. I will speak a bit in Turkish a little bit later in my remarks, but the problem I have is that I was introduced by Haluk Dinçer, The problem isn't simply that Haluk's English is far better than my Turkish. The problem is that Haluk's English is far better than my English, so therefore I'm somewhat embarrassed to be up here, but I'll do my best in both languages. What I want to do is talk a bit about specifically the economic side of our relationship, because this was a big issue a year ago. It was central to the discussions between President Gül in particular and President Obama in April. Then it was reiterated when President Obama met with Prime Minister Erdogan last December 7th. The two announced a new framework for strategic, economic, and commercial cooperation, and I'll talk a little bit about that and the role of the private sector. And then, and this is where I'll try to get into Turkish, more generally I'll talk about our relationship and why we think economic as well as strategic relations are so important, what we have in common with Turkey, and why Turkey is so important to us. And I'll take a few questions if we have time. So, let me begin. As I said, since the meeting in April, we've been working hard to try to tackle a very troubling problem in U.S.-Turkish relations, which is why our economic and trade relations remain relatively low, particularly in terms of statistics, when your trade with the European Union over the past decade has boomed, and you're now developing better trade relations, for example, with the Middle East, with Russia, and with the Far East, and even in Africa. Part of this, of course, is Turkey is simply developing in every direction and is very successful. But part of it is the particular problems getting into the American market, because while our trade is relatively low, it's also unbalanced, with most trade flowing to Turkey and not that much Turkish trade to the United States, which is obviously important economically and it's important politically, because exports mean jobs, and it means high-quality jobs, it means foreign currency earnings. And the Turkish government is very right to be concerned about this, as is the American government. But generating trade is not easy. So the first thing we did is an inventory, working with this organization and many other Turkish organizations and with American business. We spent many months trying to develop plans and understand some of the problems. The result of this is this framework proposal that we held a ceremony with the U.S. Trade Representative and the Secretary of Commerce of the United States with Deputy Prime Minister Ali Babacan right after the meeting between President Obama and Prime Minister Erdogan in December to launch the framework. And we're looking at tying together a number of different economic, structural, government-to-government meetings and initiatives that we have under the umbrella of this framework. That includes the Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, or the TIFA, which we will be having in several months, the Economic Partnership Commission, which we do with the State Department and other agencies, with the Turkish Foreign Ministry and other parts of the Turkish government, and our energy partnership, which is very, very important and is tied to strategic energy orientation. And that's one thing that is important that I will mention today, both to the people here and to the press. Our economic relationship with Turkey is not simply a question of trade statistics, what is exported from America to Turkey, or what is exported from Turkey to the United States. It involves geostrategic cooperation, such as on the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, and the work we're doing with Turkey and with other players on Nabucco, trying to find other sources from Azerbaijan to Iraq for gas. It's our cooperative efforts in Iraq, not just on the military or the strategic side, but also on investment and in energy. We're working very closely with Turkey on that. And there's a whole economic and development side to our close cooperation in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. In addition, you have many American firms here, Hewlett Packard and Dow are just two, that use Turkey as a logistical world center for exports to third countries. That doesn't come up in the statistics, but it plays an important role not only in trade, but also in investment and technology transfer. And at the top of the high-tech pyramid, and top of the line military trade and aviation, Turkey is a preferred partner of the United States. As many of you know, we've seen in the 787 Dreamliner a major Turkish component. We see this in Sikorsky helicopters, and on and on and on. The success of Turkish industry, if you can find a niche in the United States, as Fort Otosan has been able to find, suddenly overnight we go from almost no export of automotive equipment to the United States to $400 million in 1 year, and that was a bad year for the international economy. So if we can build on that, we believe that we can find in the next several years a major increase, perhaps as much as a tripling of trade between our two countries, and we can find other sectors, such as, for example, tourism. ASTA, the American Association of Tourist Agents, which is crucial for developing tourist markets, has chosen for its international meeting of the year, which city? Istanbul. And that's not a mistake. That is simply a vote of confidence in Turkey, and particularly Istanbul, as a major international class tourism center. Now, most of the people in this room, however, recognize that economic and trade development is not primarily the job for governments. It's the job of the business sector, and it's done by private entrepreneurs. The role of government should be to create the legal, regulatory, and bureaucratic environment or framework that allows businesses to make transparent decisions driven by shareholder interest and income potential, while ensuring fair competition and protecting the public good. The private sector should have a mechanism, thus, to communicate to the Turkish government and to the American government its ideas and concerns for our governments. Now, we have a variety of organizations. One of the most distinguished and one of the most important is yours here today, which works with the American, the ATC, and works with other organizations, and we have a variety of American organizations too. However, our laws in setting up any commission or advisory group require us to go directly to private firms. So we're going to be, from the American side, reaching out to private American firms to provide advice to the U.S. government as we work in this framework, and the Turkish government, which has different rules, presumably will be reaching out to organizations such as this one and to TOB. But that's the Turkish government's decision. But nonetheless, we look forward to a very, very active exchange of private sector and public governmental opinion as we move forward to try to eliminate barriers to trade and to stimulate not just trade but investment, because much of trade flows from investment. To look at some of the obstacles to trade, to look at ways that we can cooperate together. As I said, we've been successful in some areas. We'll see if we can be successful in others. In looking at how we work together with Turkish institutions, including yours, we believe that we've already seen tremendous cooperation. For example, both Haluk Bey and Rifat Hisatçılıoğlu of TOB participated in a recent meeting between Deputy Prime Minister Babacan, Minister Çağlayan, and several other cabinet-level officials and heads of Turkish non-governmental organizations to talk about ways to build trade and attract inward investment. And of course, as I said, we have the ATC every year. We have a wide variety of organizations. We have ABFD, we have TABA, we have TOB, TAİK, we have TÜSİAD, and so forth, that are all working together. And we need to build on this, and we need to try to gather information on what works and what doesn't. For example, I was recently briefed on a report contracted with TAİK and McKinsey & Company that contains a very useful analysis of trade issues, in which discuss many ideas focusing on Turkish exports to the United States. The ABFT is about to release its annual survey of American firms on what works and what doesn't work in relations with Turkey. That's very important as well, because these people are on the front line of sponsoring trade relations. So we think that we have a very, very active future in front of us with this new framework, building on the relationships that already exist and taking advantage of the uptick in the international economic situation in 2010. Turkey will grow significantly this year. You heard, some of you heard Finance Minister Şimşek in his prediction of last night. The IMF has raised its prediction for the Turkish economy. We believe the American economy will grow as well. In both of our countries, unemployment remains a serious economic and political factor. It's a delayed symptom of an economic crisis, but nonetheless, we believe that we'll also make progress in this in the coming 1 or 2 years. Let me try to explain, and this is where I'll turn to Turkish, why we, the United States, is putting so much emphasis in Turkey. Niçin Amerika için Türkiye o kadar önemli, o kadar muhim bir ülke? Her Türkiye ile çalışan Amerika kan başka bir sebep bahsedebilir. Fakat ben şahsi olarak şunu söylemek istiyorum. Türkiye ne kadar başarılı bir ülkedir. Herhalde biraz sürpriz gibi bunu söylüyorum. Çünkü her gün gazetelerinizde büyük bir kriz ortaya çıkıyor. Bunalım var, çatışma var, bu siyasi grup, öbür siyasi grup falan falan. Ama bu normaldir. Hem Amerika'da hem de İngiltere'de hem de Türkiye'de böyle bir durum normaldir. Fakat Balkanlardan Karadeniz üzerine Orta Doğu'da Hindistan'a kadar böyle bir o kadar başarılı, o kadar istikrar bir ülke Türkiye gibi yok. Türkiye hariç. Bu çok önemli şey. Bizim bunu hiçbir zaman unutmamız gerek. Çünkü Türkiye bir örnek ortaklığı bizimle ile öbür ülkeler bu bölge içinde örnek olarak çalışabilir. Aynı zamanda Türkiye güvenlik ihracat eden bir ülke. Bu çok önemli. Genel olarak ben örnekler söylemek istemiyorum ama genel olarak Amerika ile çok güvenlik tüketlerin ülkeler ile çalışıyor. Fakat Türkiye bir güvenlik ihracat eden bir ülke. Özellikle bu yeni sıfır problem siyaset içinde. Hem Kafkasya'da, Ermenistan ile hem de Kıbrıs ile, Irak ile, Erbil ile falan falan çok başarılı bir siyaset bu. Onun için biz son derece yakın şekilde Türkiye ile siyaset ve diplomatik alanda çalışıyoruz. Fakat hala daha yoğun şekilde biz Türkiye saygılıyoruz. Niçin? Çünkü söylediğim gibi çok başarılı bir ülkeniz var. Mesela şimdi G20 içinde Türkiye 16 ve 17 en büyük ekonomi. Fakat tabii ben şahsi olarak birkaç bunun için her şey için 3 sebep var. Yani başarınız için. İlk olarak Türk halk. Bu halk bir demokrasi seven, bir özgürlük seven, bir serbest piyasa ve teşebbüs seven bir halk. Bu çok önemlidir. Türkiye istikrarlı bir ülke, bir istikrarsız bir bölgede bulunuyor. Bu bir kaza değil. Bu demek ki Türk halk her zaman değil, hiçbir halk her zaman doğru karar alıyor. Fakat genel olarak Türkiye öbür ülkeler kıyasla doğru karar alıyor. İkinci sebep ise bir adam Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Sadece Türkiye'nin 20 yıl lider olduğu değil, hepimizin liderimizi oldu. Çünkü bir örnek verdi bütün ülkeler. Birinci Savaş'tan sonra bu istikrarsız bölgelerde ve o zaman İmparatorluğu şüphesiz istikrarsız bir bölgede ve savaş gören bir bölge. Hala daha savaş gören bölge, öbür istikrarsız bölgeler karşılaştırıldığınız. Fakat öbür bölge ne kim yarattılar? İtalya'da bir Mussolini, Almanya'da bir Hitler, Rusya'da bir Lenin ve bir Stalin, Çin bir Mao Zedong, Japan bir Hirohito, İspanya bir Franco. Yani öbür ülkeler, öbür halklara hücum eden, saldıran liderler. Türkiye çok bambaşka bir siyasette izledi ve Mustafa Kemal Atatürk söylediği gibi yurttaşıl, cihandaşıl. Bu kelimeler hem o zamanda hem de bugün çok önemlidir. Üçüncü sebep bence Türkiye ile uluslararası toplum ve özellikle Batı toplum arasındaki ilişkiler için. Kore Savaş'tan sonra şimdiye kadar Türkiye ile Batı dünya arasındaki ilişkiler çok faydalı. Hem Batı için Amerika dahil hem de Türkiye için ne vardı? NATO vardı. Avrupa Birleşmiş Gümrük Birliği vardı. 2001 IMF ile antlaşma vardı ve şimdilik görebiliriz ki bu son bunalım boyunca Türkiye finans durum çok sağlık, çok doğru kalabildi. Niçin? Çünkü Türkiye ile IMF arasındaki anlaşma gerçekten bir istikamet verdi. Hem IMF için hem de Türkiye için. Türkiye ile Avrupa Birliği üyelik müracaat de çok önemli. Onun için Başkan Obama her Avrupa lider ile ziyaret yaparken bunu vurguluyor. Onun için bu ilişkiler son derece önemli eskiden şimdiye kadar ve gelecekte önemli kalacak. Çok sağ olun.
Sayın Büyükelçi'ye bu güzel konuşma için teşekkür ediyoruz. Kendisi salondan soru alabileceğini bana ifade ettiler. Dolayısıyla sorularınızı bekliyoruz. Please.
İnşallah İngilizce çünkü biraz Türkçe konuştuktan sonra zorluk çekiyorum. Fakat Türkçe olursa çalışıyoruz. She speaks English, so it better be in English, so.
Whichever you want. Barchi Inanç from Daily News Ambassador, thank you very much for this speech. Two questions basically. As you said, the economics between Turkey and America is not just simple statistics, and it involves geostrategic relations as well. That's why I guess you wouldn't find it, I suppose, are one of the biggest allies in the region of United States. There are that the U.S. administration have been telling the Turkish government to keep it a bit down or to change its position. The other line of thinking would rather say that the Obama administration does not see eye to eye on the Gaza issue with the Israelis. Therefore, it suits its interests that Turkey is bashing Israel on that issue. I was wondering which of these two lines of thinking are the right one. My second question would be, you have mentioned yourself Nabucco. Müsaade eder misiniz yoksa verebilirim tabii. Devam edebilir miyim? One more question. On the Nabucco, what would you say, what is your reaction?
What we do believe, though, is that mutually advantageous relations and relationships that have seen a lot of commitment in the past, a lot of, we call in economic terms, most of you are business people, sunk costs, should be preserved at all possible. Thus, we urge both sides, the Israelis and the Turks, to try to overcome the current rough spot in the relationship, and we've seen considerable progress. You've had a variety of senior Israeli officials, including just the last several weeks, the Minister of Defense and former Prime Minister Barak, and the Secretary General of the Foreign Ministry here. We've seen contracts signed, we've seen military exercises continuing, we've seen a variety of positive developments, and we're very encouraged by that. On Nabucco, I think Prime Minister Erdogan said it very well. You remember Mr. Putin made a comment when he was here in August about rivals, and Prime Minister Erdogan basically said that they're not rivals, they're two different projects. That's how we look at it. We're not opposed to any project that will help provide energy resources to the world and to Europe. We think that these projects should be diverse. We think that the more different sources, the more different transit routes, and the more commercial the deals, the better. Thus, we particularly support Nabucco, but we're not opposed to anything.
Taliban, if it will be necessary, also the American commander Stanley McChrystal mentioned about it. Do you think that it's possible, or what would you like to say about this situation? It's possible to make an agreement with Taliban by Turkey's mediation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, any military situation is fluid. And no one, particularly one such as I, who is not responsible for military operations, can predict what NATO or the member states of NATO, including Turkey, will decide is the necessary level or quality or conditions of combat employment in the future. As General McChrystal recently said, you remember he gave an interview, and this is based upon Turkey's very significant doubling of its force presence in Afghanistan, and Turkey's great contributions with its PRT and Wardak, with its other initiatives, including possibly a new PRT in the near future, its training of the Afghani security forces. That's just on the security side. In terms of development assistance, education, agricultural support and such, Turkey is second to none in Afghanistan, and we much appreciate its work. In terms of the Taliban, this is clearly a subject that is under review, both in the meetings here this week, the summit between the three leaders, then the Friends of Afghanistan, and in the London summit. I don't want to prejudge what Secretary Clinton will decide. What I will say is this is a complicated question. General McChrystal discussed it at some length in general terms, but as I know from my experience in Iraq, where we pursued a policy of trying to insert a wedge in the insurgency, the devil is always in the details, and one of the most important things is to ensure that the international community's position is closely coordinated with that of the government of the country that you're supporting. And that's all I'll say on that question. Thank you.
Başka sorusu olan var mı?
Oh boy.
Sayın Büyükelçimize bugünün anısına bir küçük hediye veriyoruz TAİK'ten. Please.
Çok sağ olun. Okay, put it up. Tamam. Okay.
Pardon.